went out to the rally about noon and as a faculty marshal. Just as I got to the Taylor Hall, the National Guard Jeep drove out and said, "You must leave, this rally's illegal." I said to my friend Norman Duffy, "Let's go down and talk to the students," convince them, and I wanted them to leave because we were worried about the bayonets on the rifles. We had no inclination that the guns were loaded, which of course they were. And just as we were beginning to walk down the hill from Taylor Hall to where the activists were, the National Guard started coming across the commons and began to tear gas the demonstrators and the observers and the faculty marshals. So I went up past Taylor Hall, turned left, went down into the parking lot, and the guard came up the hill towards the pagoda. When they got to the pagoda, the right rear echelon of guardsmen turned and fired. And I'd been in the Army, so I knew that those were real bullets because light travels faster than sound. So I dove for cover behind a bush and was on the ground quick enough that the guard finished their firing in 13 seconds. And then I stood up and I remember saying to myself, what should I do? When a student rushed up who knew me and said, "Dr. Lewis, those were blanks, weren't they?" And I said, "No," and I pointed to Sandy Scheuer's body. I didn't know it was her at the time. And I began to run around the back of the parking lot saying, "I'm Dr. Lewis, you must leave, those are real bullets." And did that for a while, did a couple other first aid things, and then I walked back to the Commons where the senior faculty were speaking to the students who had gathered on the Commons around the Victory Bell. There was just no reason to fire. It was a rather incredulous response to the shootings. I just couldn't understand, and to this day I don't understand why they fired. I really didn't assess until much later the long-term consequences, obviously, but also the national and international consequences of the shootings. We were so focused locally that we didn't realize that it was becoming a cause célèbre around the world. And part of that reason for the cause célèbre was the Mary Vecchio picture by John Philo, which went all over the world and was on all the national and regional newspapers. I think there are several. I think probably the two most important, it represents the tragedy for American society and microcosm of the Vietnam War. The agony of Mary Vecchio screaming over Jeffrey Miller's body certainly illustrates the tragedy of the Vietnam experience and our involvement in the war. Secondly, it encourages to have a national and international debate about force. In American society, people have a right to protest and demonstrate. And this was taken away with powerful force by the state. As terrible as Virginia Tech was and the tragedy at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, these were madmen. What Kent State was the state representatives firing into a crowd of unarmed students. And so we in a society and a democracy have to continue to debate the amount of force that is used against us when we are trying to make a statement. The right of assembly is guaranteed by the Constitution. I think the Visitor Center will certainly facilitate knowledge and visiting the site and learning about it and things like that. I think the annual walk and vigil will continue certainly through the 50th, and we'll see what happens after that. But I think there'll be key pieces like the Visitor Center, the memorial, and the vigil, which will continue to remind this student body as well as the nation about May 4th.